Be honest about the year. 12 months ago, in your target language, you could introduce yourself, order food, survive the small talk, and understand way more than you could say. And today, it's the same list. You didn't stop studying, you didn't get lazy, you put in more hours since than most people do in total, and that level didn't move. If that's you, here's the thing that I need you to sit with, okay? Nothing is wrong with you, but something is very wrong with a rule that you're following. There's a specific piece of advice, and it's good advice that genuinely carried you from zero to where you stand, that has an expiry date nobody printed on the label. Today, I'm going to show you what that advice quietly turns into once it expires and why some of the most disciplined learners I've ever met have been serving years inside without ever seeing the walls. And because years should never be your unit of measurement for anything, by the time we're through, you'll also have a way to get a number that ends the guessing for good. I want you to meet Aria before we go any further. She's learning Japanese, and when she came to us, she had been at it for 3.5 years. Textbooks, chapter tests, speaking lessons, the whole responsible path or whatever. And here's what the 3.5 years bought her. She could pass every quiz at the end of the chapter, fill in every blank about some fictional student's weekend plans, and if you asked her to talk about her own weekend in the language that she'd been studying for 3.5 years, she couldn't do it at all. And those are her words. That is the plateau. Not slow progress, motion without movement. And I've seen versions of her story over and over, sometimes running a lot longer than 3.5 years. Here's the plan for getting out. First, I'm going to name the trap, the rule that walked you into this, and the exact point where it flips from a ladder to a cage. Second, I'll show you why you can't see it happening, the reason that smart, disciplined people sit inside this thing for years. And third, the way out. 2 moves and a fair warning. The first one is going to sound completely backwards. By the end, you'll also hear how Aria's story turned because the ending is the best part. So let's get into it. Picture your average Tuesday with me and tell me where I get this wrong. The app, the podcast, the series, you show up and it isn't a discipline problem. And the studying feels fine, comfortable even. But conversations still live in the same fenced yard they lived in last year. So every few months you have the crisis. Is it a new app? Is it back to grammar? Maybe I'm just someone who caps out. You switch something, you feel productive for 2 weeks, and the fence doesn't seem to move. If that sounds familiar, then just keep this word in your head. Comfortable. That word is doing a lot more damage than it sounds like. You already know the 2 things that people say to a plateaued learner. They say, 1, okay, well that's normal, everyone plateaus, just be patient and push through. Or 2, the evil twin, you've probably hit your natural ceiling and some people just don't really push past intermediate. One of those tells you to keep doing the exact thing that stopped working, and the other one tells you that your problem is basically your DNA. Both are wrong, both are expensive, because the currency here is years. Here's what's actually true. You didn't hit a wall or a ceiling, and you don't need more patience. You just aged out of your method. The strategy that took you from nothing to intermediate was correct, and that's what makes this so hard to see. And somewhere behind you, without announcing it, it quietly expired. You've been climbing a ladder that just ran out of rungs and calling the air above it a ceiling. So let's name the rule here. From day one, everyone worth listening to, me included, told you some version of this. Feed yourself the language one small step above where you are. Content you mostly understand with just enough new in it to stretch you. In the research, they literally write it as a formula, your level +1. At the beginner stage, this rule is absolute gold. It's why you got anywhere at all, to be honest. It turns the language into a ladder, and every piece of content is just the next rung up. But the rule has a failure mode that nobody warns you about, and I gave it a name because you're going to want to remember it. It's the phantom rung. Past a certain point, that next rung, that perfectly leveled piece of content one step above you, stops existing, and you keep reaching for it anyway. Not because you're foolish, but because researching for it still feels like studying correctly. And that's the trap. Years spent grabbing at a rung that isn't there, locked in place by your own discipline. And here's the mechanism, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. When you were a beginner, your level was just one simple number. You knew almost nothing about everything, and so any beginner content was your +1. Perfect supply basically everywhere. But intermediate you isn't one number anymore. You're spiky. Make it concrete, okay? Like score yourself out of 100 topic by topic. The ground that you've drilled, so I'm saying introducing yourself, your work, food that you like, you're sitting at about a 90. Now score the news. Or 2 natives arguing at full speed about something that you've never studied. Single digits, right? Same language, same brain, same afternoon. So now find me the video that's one step above that. It doesn't exist. Everything you pick up is secretly 2 things at once. Insultingly easy on your strong background and a brick wall of it. That's why the rung is a phantom, not because you're broken, but because your level stopped being a place anything can be one step above. And here's what the trap looks like on an actual Tuesday so that you'll recognize it. You open the app or YouTube and you start looking. This one's too easy. This one's too hard. The podcast is about crypto. Who cares? 20 minutes deep and you're still shopping. You finally pick something. It doesn't feel right either. You bail 2 minutes in and start shopping again. I've watched students burn entire sessions this way and log them as study time. And listen, the search feels responsible. You're trying to obey the rule. The perfect next step content has to be out there somewhere. But every one of those minutes spent hunting is a minute zero language is entering your head. That 20-minute shopping spiral is the phantom rung doing its work. Every scroll is another grab at a rung that just isn't there. That's what's been running your calendar. For years, quietly, that's where the hours have been going. Into researching. Now, before I give you the way out, one thing about the word years, because that word should scare you more than it does. The trap survives on vagueness. Almost nobody who can see a finish line sits in the same spot for 3 years. And that's exactly why the Fluency timeline calculator exists. You just punch in your language and the daily amount of time that you can honestly commit, and out comes an arrival date instead of a vibe. When the date is real, drift gets loud and you can watch it moving away from you every week. The trap eats your hours. It's in the description and the pinned comment, so your date is just about 2 minutes of typing away. What it tells most people is the uncomfortable good news. The finish line was never years away at your pace. It was just at your current method's pace. Okay, you made it here. The way out. Move 1, and I warned you that it sounds backwards, stop reaching for the rung. Stop looking at content at your level and start flooding yourself with content above it. Real native material, the shows that natives binge, the podcasts they play at the gym, and the videos they send each other. As a beginner, that would have been malpractice and I would have stopped you. Past intermediate and the equation flips, volume beats comprehensibility. If you're catching 30 to 50%, you are not failing. You're exactly where acquisition is happening for you now. Because here's the secret about too hard, okay? Native content isn't uniformly hard. Buried inside the scariest native material are hundreds of completely ordinary sentences, the connective tissue of the language, the phrases that carry every conversation. And at your level, those are reaching you constantly, even while whole paragraphs sail past. You've outgrown a curated diet. Take the training wheels off and let the language hit you at full speed. Here's tonight's version of this. Pick one native show or podcast and take in a full episode straight through, okay? No pausing, no dictionary. Half understood at volume beats perfectly understood in a trickle every single time. Move 2 is what makes move 1 survivable. You don't flood on everything. You pick a lane and flood there. One topic you genuinely love, and you go deep enough that the language of that world becomes yours. Depth first. Width shows up later on its own because the core of the language, the glue words, the rhythms, the grammar, rides alongside any topic you pick. This is exactly how our Aria story turns. She joined Fluency Formula after 3.5 years of the responsible path and did the thing that most people are too proud to do. She canceled her speaking lessons and restarted as if she were a beginner. Her call, and a gutsy one, and rebuilt on listening. 200 hours of it. Inside our community, she stopped curating and started living in Japanese that she actually cared about. Her lane got as specific as playing a video game called Little Kitty, Big City, entirely in Japanese, and letting the language of that little world soak in. And then one night, the trap broke in the most beautiful way possible. She fired up a Japanese show she'd been watching. She uses a browser tool that shows subtitles, and the tool silently failed to load.
And I watched a full 3 minutes of this show before I realized there were no subtitles. So before I heard something where I was like, oh, well, I'll just read it. And it's like, no, actually, there's nothing here to read. So I knew immediately that like that 3 minutes of just absorbing the Japanese was down to Fluency Formula.
She watched 3 full minutes before even noticing that there was nothing to read on the screen. 3.5 years of chapter tests could not give her that, and 200 hours of focus did. And when she finally got back on a call with her original tutor, she opened by doubting herself out loud. She wasn't sure if all that listening had done anything for her speaking, and the tutor cut her off mid-sentence. "You've definitely gotten better," is what he said. He said, "I can hear the difference." Your version of Move 2 starts this week. Pick one lane, one show, one creator, one topic you'd binge in English anyway, and commit to living there for a month. Now the warning label, because moves 1 and 2 come with a rough first month. When you flood with harder input, progress stops feeling so smooth. Some days you'll swear that you got worse. Tuesday, you follow everything. Thursday, you're drowning. That zigzag is what real progress looks like at this level. The plateau only felt better because comfortable content flatters you. So on bad days, don't ask how it felt. Ask whether the hours landed at volume in your lane. If they did, it's working. And give the speaking side a few weeks of patience. What comes out of your mouth today was built on the input from weeks ago, so the payoff always arrives on a delay. Whatever you do, don't switch systems right before the lag pays out. That's exactly why I had you get a date from the calculator instead of a feeling. Watch the hours land, the date holds. Now at this point, I can already hear somebody typing, I tried native content, I understood nothing, it was miserable, and I quit. Right, because you probably did it without a lane. Random native content across random topics is the hardest possible version. Every video resets the vocabulary, nothing compounds, and your 30% never really grows. Inside one lane, the same words and structures come back to you again and again from different angles. The repetition is built into the topic itself, so this week's episode is comprehensible because of last week's. That's the difference between bombardment and drowning. It's the same water, but one has a structure holding you up. And that's the general truth about this stage. It doesn't need more willpower, it just needs a sequence. Flood in a lane, tracked in hours, judged over weeks. Any one of those alone feels random, by the way, but together they're a system with an exit built in. So let's go back to the diagnosis you've been quietly carrying, that you're someone who caps out at intermediate. Look at the actual evidence. You took yourself from zero to understanding most of what you hear, and that's the hard part, and you already did it. Then your method expired and you kept obeying it, which isn't a talent problem, it's what disciplined people do when nobody tells them the rule changed. Arya isn't built different from you. 3.5 years stuck, and the fix wasn't a gift from the language gods. She swapped an expired rule for a live one and put 200 hours through it. Your number might land somewhere different than hers, but the swap is the same swap. The ceiling you've been living under isn't load-bearing. It's the shadow of a ladder that ran out, and you can build past it starting this week. Okay, if you keep one sentence from all of this, keep this one. You're not stuck at your level, you're stuck at your rule. The one step up rule built your foundation, then it expired, and every year since has gone to reaching for a phantom rung, a next level that stopped existing. The way out is 2 moves. Flood past your level inside a lane you love and judge it by reps and weeks instead of feelings and days. The learners who escape this aren't more gifted than you. They just stopped taking orders from rule that stopped working. And hey, if you want the guessing gone before you even close this tab, the Fluency Timeline Calculator is waiting in the description and in the pinned post. Your language, your real hours, and your actual date. And if this clicked and you want the full picture where the flood fits, what comes before it, what comes after, the whole path from zero to real conversations, that's my video, The Fluency Roadmap. And it's already loaded up right after this one, so just let it carry you there. But either way, remember, the rule expired. You didn't. Go swap it starting today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.